A massive tsunami, registering 8.8 on the Richter scale, hit Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula in the Pacific Ocean. The damage was profound. In the aftermath of that event, tsunami warnings sounded throughout the west coast of the United States and on Hawaii as worries of flash flooding and earthquake damage filled the minds of countless Americans who live in those areas. It's been years since something like this massive, has struck that peninsula. According to the Polish open source intelligence Twitter profile at Visegrad24, the powerful tsunami hit, quote, the key strategic Russian Navy base of Rybaki, where it is located. Hundreds of nuclear warheads and Russian submarines are based here, including Delta-III and Borei missile carriers with nuclear missiles, as well as multi-purpose nuclear submarines equipped with Caliber, Onyx, Zircon missiles, and Poseidon nuclear torpedoes. Interestingly, the tsunami epicenter was just 65 nautical miles or 75 miles away from Russia's massive submarine base. The Delta-III and Borei class submarines stationed there that may have been damaged by the tsunami are among some of Russia's most advanced, hard-to-replace nuclear-powered submarines. What's more, the presence of large numbers of low-yield nuclear weapons and Zircon hypersonic missiles that may have all been damaged by the tsunami makes some observers, those who aren't part of the establishment, somewhat skeptical that this was entirely a natural event. After all, back in 2013, the very mainstream publication USA Today reported that the United States and New Zealand had successfully tested a so-called tsunami bomb. And of course, there's always the concerns about the Alaska-based HARP facility possibly being the source of the underwater earthquake. So what gives? Was this just a really convenient, totally natural tsunami, or was there something more nefarious, more militaristic perhaps, at play here? We're joined now by Dr. Naomi Wolf. She's the editor of the Pfizer Papers and founder of the investigative website dailyclout.io. And you may ask, why have Dr. Naomi Wolf talk about this? Because Naomi, first off, it's good to see you, my friend. We haven't seen each other in a while, but you've been warning about the kind of capabilities we have militarily, right? Like geoengineering the weather, cloud seeding, that at one point was so taboo to just say it, put a tinfoil hat on your head. And now we have people openly admitting it to it, and as part of the public discourse. Is this perhaps a similar instance?
Well, it's great to see you too, Emerald. And as you were giving your intro, I was thinking, yep, Emerald and I are the crazy conspiracy theorists. Once again, we're just reporters ahead of the curve, before everyone else eventually always catches up. It's frustrating. I've been reporting on geoengineering since 2017, and what I will say to your question, it's the same answer I gave to your producer, which is I can't know from what I understand about these various technologies if geoengineering is involved in this highly strategic, purely coincidental strike on a military facility. But these are the right questions to ask, because we do know for sure, it's abundantly confirmed that there are many programs with multiple technologies deployed around the world, both by ourselves and our allies and our adversaries that use geoengineering. And what we also know for sure is that history is full of unintended consequences. So to my knowledge, there are four major kinds of confirmed geoengineering. There's marine cloud brightening, which is done with the trails of ships at sea. There's something called solar radiation management, which sprays sulfates, chemicals to dim the sun. People are aware of it around the world. There's cloud seeding, which is a euphemism for shooting kind of flares into the middle of clouds to force them to yield rain. That's being done all over the world. It also makes fires burn hotter. And there's HARP, which you mentioned. And to me, I would zero in on HARP, because HARP, HAARP, it really is a facility. It's not a conspiracy theory. It really exists. It's got a website. It's got, reports to Congress. It's got funding in Alaska. And what I was saying a moment or two ago is that history is full of unintended consequences. So we barely know how our beautiful planet operates on a macro level. We barely know what relationship, if any, there is to, you know, perturbing the ionosphere, which is what HARP actually does in their own words. I had this confirmed from the director of HARP on Twitter at that time when I reported on it in 2017, 2018. We don't know what experiments to perturb the ionosphere might set off around the world. We don't know the impact of one system on another system. We don't know if you kill enough clouds, do clouds just change their behavior, right? We don't know if you dim the sun, too aggressively around the world, do crops just decide to fail? We literally don't know any of those things. Our planet is so unbelievably complex. Only our creator could possibly come up with a system this complex. And so, I mean, just to give one example of the unintended consequences, wildfires burning out of control in California, right where PG&E has been cloud seeding for years with chemicals that make fires burn hotter. It's not their intention to make fires burn hotter. It's their intention to fill the dams that create hydroelectric power for their utility, which charges money. Unintended consequence, horrible fires that kill people, destroy property, that are killing plants, flora, fauna. They're not what they're supposed to be. So I guess what I would conclude is to say there are these massive tools in which humans literally don't know what they're doing being deployed around the world, and there's a huge earthquake and tsunami. It's worth investigating.
So you said HARP is real and it's a facility that actually exists. That's the facility we're showing on the screen right now. I just wanted to clarify that for our audience. That is the HARP facility. And I actually didn't know this, and I wish I had that response to you from the director of HARP confirming some of your reporting, because if that happened, what'd you say, 2017, 2018, you were still considered crazy to be talking about HARP, even though there were were government documents where HARP is listed that you could find. It was
got a
open source.
website.
It was publicly sourced information, and people in government would still try to pretend you're crazy for talking about it. What exactly did that director say to you at that time?
Well, I wish that I had those tweets in front of me. I'm sure they're still there, but basically I looked at HARP's own documents online and said, here it says in HARP's own words that the goal of HARP, these experiments, is to perturb, which is a word that I'm an English major, right? I'm not a medical doctor, but perturb is a really interesting word because it can mean a lot of things. It can mean a massive cataclysm, or it can mean a tiny little, tickle, right? But it's a disturbance, right? To perturb the ionosphere. And I also was very struck that the way HARP's own materials talk about what HARP is doing is that it's experimental. It's not a completed, understood technology that they're deploying in a measured, reportable way. They're experimenting with the ionosphere, and the ionosphere, again, I'm not an astronomer, is a layer of the what surrounds the planet above the atmosphere, as I recall. So that seemed like the definition of a very gigantic unintended consequence, right? That seemed like the definition of, oh, it's the Tower of Babel. Let's just build it to the sky to, let's just mess with heaven, and, nothing bad could possibly happen. We just don't know. And we also know that tides, I mean, now I'm getting all kind of medieval and intuitive, which probably is not appropriate.
That's why I like you, though.
Well, thank you. But, let's just think back. I mean, astrologers and astrology has been a science in many cultures and parts of the world for thousands of years. I'm not talking about wacky astrology in your newspaper, but people who study the movement of the planets and stars connect them to tides. There's gravitational pull of planets and stars to tides. Do I know that messing with the ionosphere has an effect on tides? I have no idea, but I think that these are legitimate questions to ask because cultures have known for thousands of years that what happens in the heavens can affect the tides on Earth. I just don't know. There's another question to ask is surface of the Earth experimentation, maybe there was testing of nuclear products underneath the ground. We don't know. Like such things have been known to happen. Maybe there was drilling. Maybe there was. I mean, fracking has been linked with earthquakes. In the eastern United States. All of these things we do to our poor planet have unintended consequences. So maybe it's just a complete accident, or the Earth is just doing what it naturally does with this horrible earthquake and tsunami. But given that the Earth is having things done to it that in its entire recorded history have never been done before, I do think, we few independent reporters need to ask questions about these radical technologies and experiments, both in the sky and on Earth, that may be affecting scenes such as this one.
And that's the point, right, Naomi? Because this has all been done behind our backs. Not only is this, part of the climate change agenda, but this looks like, let's just say, for instance, that this is an effect of some kind of defense capability we have, some kind of militaristic capability that we have. This is, what I would consider part of unrestricted warfare, right? And we've not had to have, the American people, have not been allowed to be part of the conversation on the ethics of what we might be deploying. We have no say. And that's not how it should be in a constitutional republic.
For sure. For sure. And now that you've got weather warfare, which is, again, not my phrase, it's the phrase of the industries that are heavily invested in creating these technologies for both civilian and military purposes, it may well be, again, unintended consequences. It may well be blowback. It may be, maybe it's our technologies taking out someone else's military capability. Maybe it's China taking out someone else's military capability. Maybe it's just the planet, right? We don't know, but we do know, Emerald, that our planet is interconnected. So there's really, with weather warfare, really no such thing as there used to be in conventional warfare. We'll just send, we'll just drop a bomb over there on that part of the world and we're safe here in our part of the world. We really don't know how these systems may have blowback one to the other. So we really don't know if you attack, again, this is just a hypothetical, if you use weather warfare or use some sort of technology that is unfamiliar to us to do a hit somewhere else in the world, or even for economic reasons, right? So many commercial interests are interfering with rain, right? You can, on a commodity exchange in Chicago, you can short the produce of Mexico and then send hail, invest in hail to destroy the produce of Mexico and make $1 gazillion, right? People are doing this around the world. So we literally are in a situation in which something that seems like a really good idea or part of a national security strategy halfway around the world could come back to us in ways that we cannot even imagine.
Naomi, I actually do want to hit on commercial interests affecting policy or affecting, what happens, but in a different sector, that being the biotech and medical sector, because this is what you've been harping on also, besides HARP, for years now, since the COVID pandemic, and you and I have spent so much time talking about this. You literally put together the Pfizer paper so people could be aware of what was known and withheld from them as they try to make decisions on whether they were going to get this jab. We're now learning that we knew this, but we're now learning exactly how much, to what extent pediatricians made a huge profit from forcing vaccines, particularly on kids. Let's take a listen to this clip about that topic. Listen.
Is the truth, because I hear back and forth. I mean, do pediatricians get incentivized with percent vaccination of their?
Yes. Dr. Paul Thomas has done a very good video on that, and many other pediatricians have followed. Maybe Dr. Hooker could answer better on that.
Yeah, they're typically incentivized directly by HMOs. HMOs buy and sell vaccines, so vaccines are big businesses for HMOs. But the incentivization is usually anywhere from $200 to $600 per fully vaccinated patient, as long as their vaccines, a certain percentage of their practice is fully vaccinated. So some pediatricians can make upwards to $1 million or more a year just in those incentives.
I saw that our friend Dr. Mary Bowden had posted that she would have made, somewhere around $1.5 million if she had pushed the jabs onto her patients. That is a staggering amount of money. And no wonder when you walked in the door, they were constantly trying to sell you on it. That brings us to some other news, though, that, they did approve this Moderna vaccine, right? Vaccine, quote unquote, for kids 6 months to 12 years old recently. That was done while RFK was on vacation. That's been confirmed. Now an FDA official has been fired who, from what I have heard, tried to stop or was effective in stopping the mass approval of the mRNA jabs across the board, which is what FDA regulators wanted to do. That's Vinay Prasad. I've learned overnight that RFK did go to bat for him. But Susie Wiles and a certain investigative reporter got on the phone with Trump after RFK called and said, no, you cannot fire Prasad. And ultimately, they swayed Donald Trump to fire this official. And there's more news on the front. What do you make of the latest out of HHS? Now that, pediatricians are still, I just had a friend tell me pediatricians are still trying to push the jab on her children. And so she's just going to stop going to the practice.
Right. Good for her.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's two different stories, but they dovetail very directly, don't they? It's shocking. I knew just through the last few years that pediatricians and other doctors were being incentivized to push these vaccines, which they couldn't possibly have given their patients informed consent, because informed consent didn't exist. It was experimental. And even in the experimental documents, it was killing people, sterilizing people, disabling people. And we did know that people were being incentivized to do it. But what you just shared with me, what's come out in Senator Johnson's hearing, really is stunning. I did not know that HMOs, what a corrupt system, right? The HMO itself buys the vaccines, and then the participants in the HMO, traffic the bodies of children by scaring parents to ingest the vaccines, and then the traffickers / pediatricians get $1.5 million, for doing it. The other thing that's really creepy is this very Marxist idea that, it's not enough if you're not being paid per patient. You have to reach this kind of tipping point of a majority of your patients, or a certain number of your patients being vaccinated. And we saw that also with cities, governors, mayors were saying we have to reach 70%. We have to reach 70% of everyone in the city being vaccinated. And then there were horrible restrictions and rewards, to get to that 70%, because that released bonus money or, the flow of millions of dollars. So it's very un-American. It's definitely illegal. The Nuremberg Code doesn't apply to groups. It's an individual's right to not be experimented on. So the failures and the corruption are so multi-level in what you just shared and spelled out, and what Dr. Hooker, who's awesome, explained. I think that your friend is indicative of a real trend. Apparently just 40% of parents are fully vaccinating their kids on the childhood schedule. Parents have really woken up. So this whole disaster could turn out to have a backlash of, a particularly healthy group of kids. I've been looking at babies since 2020 because I'm so worried about babies. And for a couple of years, babies and toddlers really looked unwell. The combination of the vaccine, which, we know had horrible effects on pregnancy and childbirth, and the social restrictions of lockdowns and masks. And I was really worried about the next generation. New babies look good, and new babies look good. I know a lot of new babies who are not vaccinated at all. And, the whole mythology around vaccines is kind of falling apart. Even the ones that we knew were safe and effective, like the polio vaccine. I interviewed someone who pointed out that whole narrative was kind of imaginary, that the causes of polio had already been done away with through better sanitation, other things, before the vaccine was even rolled out. So parents just don't trust their pediatricians anymore, and people don't trust their doctors. And so many people I know, parents and just adults with their own health, are doing what your friend is doing, what I'm doing, probably what you're doing, which is we just try to stay healthy on our own. And, we'll go see the doctor if our leg falls off,
Exactly.
They're really necessary.
When you lose an arm.
Exactly. The kids,
and you still almost question it, right? You're like, do I really still go?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Will they take off my other arm?
There should be no reason for kids not to be super healthy these days, because they are not exposed to the kinds of infectious diseases they were 100 years ago. They do have better nutrition, better sanitation, and so on. So fingers crossed. Did I answer?
Quick, because we're running out of time, I want to ask you this, though, because this is a headline on Daily Clout, so I'll point our audience to it and say go read it, because we're going to have to go through this really quick, and that's about RFK overhauling the vaccine court. Will this help? Will this make the vaccine companies finally have to be accountable to a certain degree? We have about a minute, Naomi, just so you know.
Okay. Well, and to your point about Vinay Prasad, honestly, I don't think HHS is doing a great job telling that story, because I literally don't understand it, and I've tried to. So now let me speak to something I do understand. This is actually a very big deal if RFK Jr. manages to do it. Very early on, the vaccine court, we looked into it, and it is such a cesspit of corruption. The defendant really is the federal government. So if you're vaccine injured, you're not allowed to sue. All you can do is go to this mediation court, which is set up to game the system, putting the whole power of the federal government against, sick people or parents of sick children, and to not pay out decent funds. So it's very corrupt. If he has the power to overhaul it, if he does overhaul it, short of mobilizing people to repeal the PrEP Act, which would allow vaccines to be sued for damages the way every other product is suable for damages. But short of that, this really is a venue in which he has the power to make reforms. He should make reforms. He understands the regulatory context well enough to make reforms. So it's a good space for him to show that he can get some deliverables to his base without going through President Trump. Clearly they're not on the same page from what you've just described and what others have described in some areas, and his base is restless. So I'm hopeful that he makes progress cleaning up the mess in the vaccine court.
Me too. And you can read more about that story on dailyclout.io. And unfortunately, we're out of time, because you hit on something that I think you and I could go on and on and on about, and that's the lack of cohesive messaging out of HHS. I've told them that myself. You've got a messaging problem. If only they knew somebody who could help them. It's good to see you, Dr. Naomi Wolf, as always.
You too, my friend.
Thanks.
Yeah, if only we ran everything.
Oh, well, one day. Speaking of vaccines and vaccine choice, we discuss medical exemptions with Karen Kingston after this commercial break. Stick around.
With everybody talking about making America healthy again, I thought today'd be a great day to talk to all my fellow patriots about the importance of making your homes healthy again. Well, we have proudly partnered with airwaterhealing.com and their revolutionary whole home air purification system. The V3 from Air Water Healing does 3,000 square feet of purification. It eliminates dust, mold, viruses, and odors. But here's the part I love. They require no filters to ever be changed and virtually no maintenance. Whether you suffer from asthma, allergies, seasonal bronchitis, or just want to protect your family from the flu or even greater threats, don't wait to get your V3 from airwaterhealing.com today. Use code Lindell for 20% off in savings and free shipping. That's promo code Lindell at airwaterhealing.com.
A prominent pediatricians advocacy group is pushing for all religious exemptions for vaccines in all 50 states to be overturned. You see, what they want is your kids getting stuck and jabbed with all manner of poisons, no matter what, as we just discussed with Dr. Naomi Wolf. According to this particular group, they say, quote, exempting children for non-medical reasons from immunizations is problematic for medical, public health, and ethical reasons and creates unnecessary risks to both individuals and communities. As we previously reported, our friends at the Brownstone Institute broke a story about how Big Pharma was actually colluding to sabotage RFK Jr.'s nomination to Health and Human Services out of fear that he'd cancel childhood vaccinations. But according to Brownstone, Big Pharma's fear is not scientific opposition, it's that Kennedy's regulatory scrutiny may render their current profit model obsolete. They said, quote, investors are sitting on the sidelines for the next 6 to 9 months. Capital has fled the vaccine sector, and Kennedy's reform agenda is making it difficult for pharma executives to assure investors that the regulatory terrain remains exploitable. That's a good word for that. So there you have it. For all the caterwauling about the immunocompromised or other at-risk groups being placed in grave harm because of parents' understandable reluctance to have their kids poked and prodded with poisonous chemicals masquerading as medicines, it's not really about the children at all. It's about money, specifically the money that goes from Big Pharma and Medicare and Medicaid programs into the pockets of pediatricians who push vaccines to as many kids as possible without discrimination. The Gonzo actor, Woody Harrelson, once likened Big Pharma to drug dealers. We can add most pediatricians who participate in these Big Pharma payout programs for forced vaccinations to their patients in that category now as well. We're joined by Karen Kingston. She's a biotech analyst and author of the popular Kingston Report on Substack. Karen, good to see you.
Good to see you too, Emerald.
I actually do use, in full disclosure, the religious exemption because that's my right. I live in a country with a constitution that says I have religious freedom, but there's one group trying to rid us of that freedom, yes?
Yeah, absolutely. You can't hear me, can you?
Will they be successful?
Emerald, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah. Looks like we're having a little technical difficulty.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I never thought I would see the day where doctors turned into drug reps and medical associations turned into pharmaceutical lobbyists. So what the pediatricians are doing is they're doing the job of pharma lobbyists. They're lobbying state lawmakers to pass laws so that they, as you said, ban religious exemptions, and they also constrain parental rights in the interest of the state's interest. What they're basically doing is they're saying when your child goes to school, they're the property of the state. They're the property of the government. And I am just shocked and appalled that the American Academy of Pediatricians is doing this. And Big Pharma is behind it. So the AAP, the American Academy of Pediatricians, published this statement, in the JAMA Journal Pediatrics, this statement, but Big Pharma is behind it, right? So they're saying, well, we are so invested in vaccines and injecting your children with foreign DNA and disease-causing material that we're going to do the job of the pharma companies. It's appalling, and I can't believe it's not being covered by more of the alt media and the mainstream media, what these pediatricians are doing.
Well, used to the corporate media covered this kind of like corporate interest, pay for play, right? This is what this is. I mean, pediatricians are getting rich. And I can't tell you how many, I went into like probably 3 or 4 pediatricians' office because you feel desperately you need them, and when you have your first child. And the way they treated me when I would ask about vaccines, and I wasn't, I wasn't actually anti-vaccine at the time. I just wanted to say, hey, I've done some research. This is the research I have. It's, the ingredients. They were combative. They were antagonistic. And they basically, too, threw me out of their practice. Okay. Now I know why. They're so incentivized, but particularly when it came to the COVID jabs, they're making so much money. And we talked about that with Naomi Wolf. And there's really no accountability for them, right? If a child is vaccine injured, nothing happens to that doctor for pushing the vaccine.
Oh,
They still
absolutely
got their
not.
money, and they're not,
Yeah. I think it's, I mean, it's absolutely appalling. And why I can't understand this as a Christian, right? And you can relate to this, Emerald. Like, we do no harm, and we're called to, protect God's children, right? If anyone should cause one of these little ones to stumble, it'd be better a millstone be wrapped around their neck and they're drowned to the deepest level of the ocean, of the sea. And pediatricians and teachers, people that who are taking care of our children, who you think would love children, are just, they're just hell-bent, and I think that's the expression to use. They are hell-bent on harming our children with injecting them, again, with genetic material that is foreign to the human species and disease-causing pathogens, and in the school, this insane doctrine, confusing children about how God made them. And it's very perplexing what's going on. And as you said, there's no ramifications to the pediatricians when they harm a child. And how could they not know they're doing harm? I mean, the vaccines have changed over the years, and I think everyone would agree with that there has been the increase in the autism. I mean, I think this is what people I think are starting to realize, is that these biological agents that they're injecting into the children go straight to the neurological system. They go straight to the brain. The number one side effects are cognitive side effects, right? And that's why we have this increased rate of autism. And it goes, and actually it showed in the Pfizer studies that within 20 minutes, the COVID vaccines go to the pineal gland, right? Which is our connection to one another, to God. And so it's making them have very low emotional intelligence, and creating people to be basically cut off from one another and from our Creator, from our God. And I think it's horrifying what's going on.
Yeah, that's why I was also so shocked when a friend of mine told me that she wasn't able to use, or was discouraged from using, the medical exemption at her private Catholic school. So there's even some Christians. You talked about the Christianity aspect of this. There's even some Christian institutions, so-called Christian institutions, that are denying these medical exemptions. So, there's a true battle here. I do want to get into something else that I talked with Dr. Wolf about in the last segment, and we had to just, run through it very quickly. But this is this overhaul that RFK is taking on over the vaccine injury court. What do you make of it? Naomi felt like it was a good idea if he really does it. Of course, there's a bit of skepticism in Naomi. Your thoughts?
I think it's a great idea. So, I'm all for suing the pharma companies, but that's a 10-year endeavor, right? So what RFK Jr., so I watched his interview with Charlie Kirk. What he's saying is, like, look, congressional intent when they set up the vaccine injury compensation program was that when a parent has a child that is vaccine injured, they could go to the government court, the vaccine government court, and quickly get compensation, because some of these children, it's $1 million a year to treat their vaccine injuries. So what he's saying is, like, we're sitting on billions of dollars. And what's happened is this court has turned into basically a dog and pony show. He actually said it is a cruel and heartless process, and they've rigged the system to deny that vaccine injuries exist and to deny compensating the parents of children who have vaccine injured children. So if the congressional intent originally was for parents to quickly get compensation. So I absolutely applaud him for doing this. They're not going to be suing the pharma companies, but they are going to be getting the monies, the financial assistance that is needed to take care of their children. And I think, you have to think about, what is your objective? What is your goal? And, I think the goal here is we have many goals, right? We don't want pharmaceutical companies to continue to put out these toxic, poisonous injections. We want them to be accountable. But the primary goal, like the urgent goal, is to get assistance to those who have been injured. So I think this is a great idea, and I applaud RFK Jr. for making this announcement. And I do have hope and faith that he's going to quickly follow through on this. There's absolutely no reason not to. He's publicly stating, that the government has to stop gaslighting parents that vaccine injuries don't exist.
Yeah, it's that, well, admitting that they exist is a step in the right direction, and September is quickly approaching. Tomorrow is August 1st. We have heard we're going to have some results from the autism study that he is put forth or is conducting under RFK's watch in September. September will be a month full of news in general, but that's a big item on our list that we're looking out for. And this is, of course, a step in the right direction, just admitting that there's even vaccine injury, particularly for the children who are subject to the childhood vaccination schedule. Thank you so much, Karen Kingston. She is the author of the Kingston Report on Substack, so you can go find it so you know about all of this important information she puts out. Good to see you, Karen. Thanks for joining us today.
You too, Emerald. Thank you.
Absolutely horrific story out of Virginia related to a local lawmaker just honestly down the road from me. We have that heartbreaking story, plus the future of Virginia politics as an election approaches this year after the break.
Swollen limbs, joint pain, inflammation, skin aging, and cognitive decline. These are just a few of the awful side effects that you can experience due to poor blood circulation. And popping ibuprofen is not a solution to the pain. It's only temporary relief, and it's only masking the true problem, which is inflammation. Researchers are saying to add this Antarctic super nutrient to your diet. I'm talking about omega-3 fatty acids, but not just any form of omegas. These particular omega-3 fatty acids are sourced from wild-caught krill. Has been shown to support healthy blood pressure, circulation, brain health, as well as reduce inflammation, swelling, and joint pain. For a limited time, you can grab Native Path Antarctic Krill Oil for up to 66% off plus free shipping. Just go to getkrill.com/Lindell right now to get your special offer.
Yes. 12 years ago, and I was able to announce to folks that night that we had made history because I had become the youngest person ever elected to Danville City Council.
That was Danville, Virginia City Councilman Lee Vogler in better times before he was set on fire by a crazy man, it seems, who stormed into his workplace with gallons and gallons of fuel, poured it on the lawmaker early Wednesday morning, and lit him on fire. It is yet another attack on an American elected official. Vogler is a 38-year-old married father of two. He first ran from the office after the lighter fluid was poured on him. He ran to the front of the building, but the suspect chased him and ultimately torched him. The suspect is one Shotzi Michael Buck Hayes, age 29, and is apparently known to the victim. Originally thought to be an act of political violence, emerging details suggest that it instead might be an instance of personal motivation. Here is Vogler with Hayes and his estranged wife a few months ago. That's Hayes' estranged wife. The Daily Mail is reporting that the suspect's wife filed for divorce a mere 2 weeks ago. Now, Virginia gubernatorial candidate and current Lieutenant Governor Winston Sears put out this statement calling for prayers and saying, quote, "Violence is never the answer and must be condemned." Join us now as the GOP candidate for Lieutenant Governor upcoming in the election this fall, Mr. John Reed. For more on this and the upcoming elections in my home state of Virginia, welcome, John. It's nice to meet you.
Emerald, I appreciate the chance to be with you. I'm on the road, headed to a meet and greet, so we pulled off and just found a great spot to talk to you, so I appreciate the chance.
Where are you headed today?
We're going to Clark County, out in the valley,
Okay.
and I'm really looking forward to meeting folks. And I'm putting the miles on the road because I'm an old-fashioned Virginian. I think you need to meet the voters and not just sit in an office and put out press releases, so I'm excited about that.
As a Virginia voter, I definitely appreciate that.
Good.
First off, I want to hit the news that, was shocking to many of us this week. Yesterday, we learned about the Councilman Vogler, such an up-and-coming bright star, right, in Virginia politics and the Republican Party. A great voice. It's so sad. It does seem, I know yesterday there were some speculation that this was yet another political event, because we have seen political violence kind of ramp up. We've seen many instances of it. Seems it might be personal. Our thoughts and prayers, of course, are going with the family. We don't know much more today, and I know that you and the others running on the Republican ticket have noted your concern and compassion for the family, John.
Yeah, it was pretty shocking. And I guess I'm glad that it doesn't appear to be politically motivated, but it says something about us as a society. Why are we creating more and more deranged people who, no matter what happens, that does make them angry, and stuff happens in life that, sends you into orbit, makes you really mad. I get it. But what can't be the solution is to attack people and to try to murder people, or to actually do that deed and kill folks. And I think we need to look at our leaders and the systems they're putting in place, because we have been looking the other way and giving people second and third chances. Of course, that makes people feel good.
Yeah.
But psychologically, I think we are empowering people to think, if I'm angry, if I'm frustrated, if someone has wronged me, then somehow it's justifiable for me to go take the law into my own hands and to punish them. And the Democrats have done that. I mean, look, here in Virginia, we got John Hinckley Jr., who tried to kill Ronald Reagan, who's now walking around free. We've had Democrat prosecutors in almost every one of the counties right outside of Washington, D.C., who refused to lock up, not somebody who stole something from a store. We could debate that. But violent criminals, it's a revolving door. And we're going to pay the price with those actual crimes. And I think we send a signal to people who are kind of borderline or on the edge that it's okay to behave this way. We got to stop it.
I think you're right. It just speaks to the deterioration of our society in general. I would say, particularly based on Democrat ideology. That is why I am very concerned about this race in Virginia. I'm in Virginia. I'm a Virginia girl, grew up here. I love living here, John. I don't want to live anywhere else. It's an amazing state. But I have major concerns about the race in November, particularly the fact that Abigail Spanberger, who is, she's very progressive. She literally, I feel like it would be the CIA running my state, and everybody knows how I feel about that. I am very concerned because the polls are showing her ahead. Now, I don't trust the polls. I understand that, but there's major concern here in our state about her. How are you all, and Winsome Sears, getting out there and appealing? I know you're literally making the rounds. Do you think Virginians really understand what leadership under Spanberger would look like?
Yeah, Abigail Spanberger was my congresswoman. She was one of the people who, and her friends, got out and bullied the Republican congressman. I'm a nice guy. I don't like to really be ugly, but I got to tell you the truth. They were in this guy's face on a regular basis, making it impossible for him to have public meetings with constituents, and it worked. And that's why you're seeing more and more Democrats go around the country to these congressional town halls and making it impossible for Republicans who really do want to talk to their constituents, who really do want to explain the big, beautiful bill, who really do want to talk about government spending and $37 trillion in debt, and prepare people for some cuts that have probably got to be made. But they can't do it because the Democrats know exactly what they're doing. They're making it impossible to communicate. And unfortunately, Republicans, I think, are very excited that Donald Trump is in the White House. I get it. I'm glad that he's making some of the tough decisions that other political leaders haven't been willing to make. But they're also kind of maybe fat and happy at the moment. And you got to know that state by state, in Virginia and in New Jersey this year, the only two states where we have these governor's elections, but starting next year, all across the country, they're going to be important elections, and we've got to stay engaged. We got to stay engaged talking to our neighbors. We've got to stay engaged on social media, which allows us to combat the mainstream media that costs so much money. And I hate to say it, we all got to open our checkbooks and make sure that Republicans can compete, because the Democrats in Virginia, they are trying to buy the three top seats. They are funneling money from New York, California. All of those groups in Washington are giving money. Like my opponent, she just got $1 million gift from the Democrat Lieutenant Governors Association. No one's ever gotten that kind of money. I'm, on the other hand, going around doing meet and greets, asking people for $100 checks. And I appreciate that, but it's going to be hard to stack up to the $1 million to tell the story that you're mentioning, which is how the Democrats want to crush our economy and break up our culture and society in a way that I don't think most people will find acceptable.
And you're absolutely right. I mean, I did see, and I don't have that headline with me, that Spanberger's outraised Winsome Sears 2-1, and a lot of that's outside money. It's the outside money coming in. But you know, even in what was it? I think it's not Virginia 7, but right next to me, the district next to me, it was Fluvanna County. There was outside leftist groups pouring huge amounts of money into the school board races, okay? A very red county, very red, doesn't look like it should be any interest to them, right? In the last school board elections, they poured in tons of money. It just speaks to how important, they understand how important these races are. They understand how important Virginia is. We got to get Republicans to understand how important. I love that you're out there, John. I saw that you were just over in near Roanoke with my friends at the Appalachian Podcast, and sat down with
awesome.
Would love those guys.
We did the podcast in this old log cabin that's pre-Civil War,
so
and I
cool,
pulled up and thought, there's a studio in here, and you know what? It was just a table with a bunch of microphones, but people love it, and that's what I'm trying to. That's how I'm campaigning, is trying to get to the heart of the matter with the regular voters and convince them that I'm their guy. I'm going to stand up for conservative principles. You know, after I did that, a whole bunch of people did make nice donations at johnreedforvirginia.com. And that helps me beat back these crazy leftists who are really all over the place trying to trash us. So I'm happy whenever I can do a podcast, I'm following the Trump lead. Let me go sit with people for 2 hours, and they can ask me whatever question they want. And most politicians won't do that. I'm willing to.
Yeah, and I mean, there's guys. I'm actually from the Appalachian Mountains. I don't live where I grew up, which is coal country in Virginia now. But you know, I love those guys, and I know they ask you questions. Look, it's huge. It's hugely important election for us in Virginia. I want to have you back as we progress and get closer to the election. And I remember when Spanberger won her congressional race that night. They just happened to find a memory card, right? A memory stick with enough votes to put her over. So she is the globalist establishment's preferred candidate. This is so important. People must understand how important this is. We'll let you get back on the road, John. Say hi to the folks in Clark County. We know a lot of the good people over there. And thanks for popping in with us.
Appreciate it. See you soon.
Speaking of election fraud, and I know all of you have been following my thread that I've been documenting in great detail on the 2020 election, and that is also General Mike Flynn dropped the big news that an intelligence community report will soon drop detailing the seal of 2020. Now we're getting even more exclusive, never before seen footage from the 2020 election in Michigan, where, as you see here, crowds of challengers and watchers were locked out of Detroit's TCF Center, and workers under Jocelyn Benson's leadership as the Secretary of State were blocked from actually watching the election results and the tabulation. Lack of visibility is just, to put it mildly. Brandon Jacobazzi of Michigan will join us tomorrow for a deeper dive on this newly revealed footage. In the meantime, the president and his team has struggled to message and to reach voters, to reach the American people as it relates to the Epstein files. Though Trump's favorability has been holding somewhat steady. We'll discuss that with Mark Mitchell after the break as we await the White House briefing for today. That's next after the break.
Whether it's being a weekend warrior or spending time with your family, feeling your best is the key to doing the things you love. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Nirvanta. It's a natural solution designed to help you stay active and live well naturally. Nirvanta is a topical blend of all natural essential oils like frankincense, myrrh, and a proprietary gold standard plant stock extract. It's perfect for your hands, feet, knees, back, or anywhere else that needs a little extra care. Use Nervanta proactively as part of your daily maintenance routine, and you're guaranteed you're going to feel the difference. Simply massage Nervanta in for at least 60 seconds, 2 to 3 times a day to get the best results. And if you're not completely satisfied, you get your money back. No questions asked. There's simply no risk and no reason not to try Nervanta today. Right now, you get 15% off with code Lindell exclusively at NervantaHealth.com. So stop reaching out for that medicine cabinet. Get Nervanta instead and experience the difference. Go to NervantaHealth.com. Use code Lindell to get 15% off today. Nervanta Health. Live well naturally.
Rasmussen has a breaking new poll out that shows that 81% of Democrats and 57% of independents think that the Trump administration is engaging in a cover-up related to the Epstein files. Even major MAGA figures are demanding that the president release the files and are asking hard questions of the president and his team because something just seems a bit off. How could it be that between the major foreign policy wins, which there are several, the passage of the president's agenda in the big, beautiful bill, and let's be honest, amazing economic news this week, 3% GDP. Inflation is down to 2.7%. President Trump's poll numbers are on the downward slope. It's because of the Trump administration's horrific handling of specifically Trump's odd behavior over releasing the so-called Epstein files. And due to his reluctance, President Trump not only created a bevy of unwanted conspiracy theories surrounding his alleged involvement with Jeffrey Epstein over the years, but now it's starting to impact his presidency. Paul Bedard over at the Washington Examiner wrote recently, quote, "It's just not the same that the first 3 to 4 months were because he's completely lost whatever messaging and narrative control capability he had." So what is going on here? Is this going to put an end to Trump's popularity? Why is this happening? Certainly, there's no truth to the rumors that Trump is in those files. He did know Epstein, right? We knew that. We've always done that. He threw him out of Mar-a-Lago. So to help us understand what's going on here and the effect that it's having on the president's popularity is Mark Mitchell. He's one of the few accurate pollsters in America. I can probably count them all on one hand, and he's at the top. Mark, I know this is not the news that a lot of people want, right? This is not what we want to be discussing, but it is now having an effect on the president. And I was just talking with a candidate about the midterms, right, and how hugely important the midterms are. And Trump, though not on the ballot, he will somewhat be on the ballot, right?
Yeah. Yeah, this is a really, really big problem. I've lost thousands of followers because of this. But listen, I just want the voters to get what they want. And right now, what they wanted is the MAGA agenda. Now, a lot of these other pollsters who do just election matchups maybe will dip their toe into the water of issue polling. And they'll say, oh, look back. And the economy was the #1 issue of voters. But we asked a ton more questions. And you and I both know that that really wasn't what voters were voting for. This was a referendum on corrupted government. 67% wanted to drain the swamp. Only 30% trusted the federal government. 53% thought the FBI was Joe Biden's personal Gestapo. 57% thought January 6th was a Fedsurrection. Over and over and over and over again. And so voters want accountability. And based on all those numbers, it's actually surprising that Donald Trump won by as little as he did. But that tells you that there is still a lot of power in the mainstream media and a lot of power in gaslighting, which there was a lot of in the last 4 years. The problem is that Trump came in and he did a really great job in the first couple of months. Doge was pumping out a lot of information. His executive orders were super popular. Right direction peaked. His numbers were going up, except for that little bit in April with the stock market implosion. And where we should be now with all of those wins is a very strong Trump approval rating. But he's underwater the last couple of days between -1 and -4 points. He was +8 in the middle of June. So this is a complete implosion after he got his big, beautiful bill signed. So is this horrible? No, but it's not where he should be. And quite frankly, if we look back and if there was a turning point, it will have been the Epstein trial, because he is just messaging this horrible.
I think you're right.
We went into the field right after Pam Bondi's announcement, and Americans like, no, the case isn't closed. We have to go after these predators. That polling got to the Trump administration, and the very next day he's attacking his supporters. So the problem is now 60% of America thinks there's a cover up here. And that is a totally different situation than just 2 or 3 weeks ago. Back then, I think he could have fixed it by saying, well, people care about this. And maybe it really is like the canary in the coal mine about accountability for our government. Maybe we should do an investigation. The problem is now the Democrats have been running with it for 3 weeks. And I think they're going to run with it from now till November 26th. And Democrats are winning right now in the generic ballot. So maybe Trump's numbers will recover. But this is really going to threaten his ability to perform in the midterms, and I think it's going to hang over his head for the next year and a half.
That's unfortunate because he has so many wins right now. And with the GDP, I mean, we thought we were going for sure headed right into recession, based on what he inherited, but really has been an economic turnaround. This is how Kurt Mills broke it down, Mark, on Al Arabia English. He was in a debate with Josh Hammer and Democratic Party strategist Joel Rubin, so he was outnumbered, but he held his own, and here's what he said.
But I think base case, we are talking about this come to autumn, and that's a fiasco for the administration. And frankly, I think it is interesting. And I think a lot of Democrats are going to ignore my co-panelist advice there, because a lot of Epstein's collaborators and clients and friends were frankly Democrats. And this is why this is such a curious maneuver for a Trump Republican White House. The Republicans are now at risk of owning the Epstein scandal, just as they are at risk of owning the Gaza war, just as they're at risk of owning the Ukraine war. These are all own goals. And I think it is related to the potential decline in Trump's poll numbers. Yes, it's not the number one issue. I think the number one issue for the Republicans is immigration, but attriting support from the low 40s to the high 30s or the low 30s, that's not good. And that puts Trump into Biden territory, as it happened in 2021. It's something he should avoid and get a handle on right now.
Kurt Mills is actually going to join us tomorrow to expound on that more. Amidst this fallout, though, there's a little bit of good news for Republicans, right? In your other polling, that young men are leaning hard, right? How will that factor in, Mark?
Yeah, it's kind of offset by the women who are leading left. That's the problem. I'll tell you, everything he said is right, except that Trump's approval ratings aren't that bad yet. They aren't in Biden territory, but we haven't seen what September is going to bring to this. And so people might really glom on to the Epstein thing. I think this might have a lot more legs. And quite frankly, the Democrat Party has turned into a high propensity party. It's affluent, white, suburban liberals. They're going to show up and vote regardless of what their party stands for. And if their party stands for getting Trump because of his Epstein ties, then what they're going to do is the biggest limited hangout operation ever. You're going to see a January 27 Epstein commission led by somebody like Adam Schiff. And of course, they're not going to go after Democrats, but that doesn't matter. The problem is that a lot of people trusted Trump and said, you know what, I don't really like Republicans. They kind of suck. They have a brand disadvantage. But if Trump's going to get in, I want him to have his party in. That's what happened in November. And now a lot of people are looking around and they're seeing, well, Trump's doing okay, but we're getting garbage DC bills. No legislation's getting passed. They're fighting Trump on the nominations. And it kind of looks like business as usual. And there hasn't been this massive accountability that I wanted. And so the problem going to November is that Trump is not on the ballot and Republicans are going to be running against the couch. That's the biggest problem.
That is a big problem. Mark Mitchell, it's just interesting to not see an adjustment in messaging based on just your polling alone, which I know the first round made it. I assume this round did too. I know they paid very much attention to it, whether you sent it over to them or not, or if they directly reached out. They're well aware of it. We shall see. We're going to see more from the administration even today. Mark Mitchell, thank you so much for jumping in with us. It's just unfortunate because there's so many good wins. We just want to highlight where maybe messaging should go, because there needs to be a course correction for all of us, because these midterm elections are huge, as I just pointed out in the last segment. We have big ones in Virginia this year, just a couple months away.
Transparency needs substance. They need real substance now. Yeah.
Thank you, Mark.
Great to be here.
Transparency does mean substance, and that's the absolute truth. That's it for this hour. I'll see you later tonight at 8 p.m. And that's the absolute truth.